So hello students, as part of our Mains 2024 paper analysis, today right now we are going to deal with the society and social issues aspect of GS paper 1. So if you look at the question paper, you'll observe some questions on the predictable line. For example, this question number 8, distinguish between gender equality, gender equity and women's empowerment. Why is it important to take gender concerns into account in program design and implementation? Now, if you have studied the previous year questions properly, if you have just gone through the trend, you will understand that UPSC asks questions related to gender. Many times in the society, many times even in the essay, they ask about gender related issue. So it was very much expected kind of question we can say. Now here there are three terms: gender equality, gender equity, women's empowerment. Now first of all, you are supposed to show the relationship between these three. Just like we earlier had governance, then we started doing good governance. Similarly, there is a trend in which we can observe how we are leading towards women empowerment. So in the introduction itself, start by defining these things. Start by showing the differences between these three things. You can even draw a diagram showing that this is gender equality. For example, when you talk about gender equality, you are simply talking about giving equal opportunity to women. So here we are focusing on opportunity part. So here you will say we will provide you equal rights in terms of everything which men are getting. All of this is part of equality. But when you talk about equity, gender equity, here the focus is not just on opportunity but the final outcome. So when you talk about equity, you say that we will ensure that the treatment is given in an unequal manner. What you will do is you will go for positive discrimination. For example, you will come up with a reservation policy or any kind of affirmative action for women, for the protection of women or for the empowerment of women. So here the focus is on final outcome and not just by providing them opportunity. So we have Article 14, 15, we have many laws which provide for some special action taken in interest of women. This is part of gender equity. And when we go for equity, then we are moving towards a third thing, that is women empowerment. Now look at this thing. Empowerment is a very broader term. Here you're not just providing opportunity or not just thinking about outcome, but eventually you have made women self-sufficient, self-powerful. You have empowered them. So what you have given them? The decision making ability. Now they are able to take their own decisions. They have got empowered, they have got awareness, they are sensitized about themselves. So here the women has become truly independent. So this is the process, or we can say this is the transition where we want our society to move ahead with. This is the progression. So you can show this with diagram or you can also mention it directly. So this is the first aspect. The second aspect is, why is it important to take gender concerns into account in program design and implementation? So they are saying simply, when the policy making goes on or policies are implemented, why do we need to think about this gender aspect? So this is a core question. This is asking, why do we even discuss about gender thing? So we need to talk about the core issues which are there. For example, the gender related issue, that is the issue of patriarchy, has got institutionalized. First of all, historically we have seen that patriarchy as an institution is existing. Secondly, right now also, even if we say that we have got modernized, still this patriarchy has got institutionalized. So even in the institutions, even in many organizations, although they will say that we are not practicing patriarchy, but in essence, in practicality, we will observe that patriarchy taking place. For example, if you look at the leadership roles in the private sector or even in the government sectors, maximum leadership roles are given to men and not women. So this is how you can elaborately show that this is the reason we are saying in policy making, policy design, implementation, we need to think about gender concerns. Then you are also thinking about this angle that even if government comes up with some laws, some schemes, those schemes are not directly benefiting women. Sometimes government gives some DBT transfer. That amount is credited to a women's bank account, but that bank account is controlled by the husband, and he will take up that money and do whatever he wants to. So the money is not reaching to that women. Even we want that in our democratic society, equitable distribution should take place. But for that, government will have to think about this gender angle. So you have to show over here why gender angle is important. And while showing for the value addition part, you can take some examples also. For example, in the budget, now government is coming up with gender budgeting. So they will come up with a document in which gender related specific schemes and all those things are specially mentioned in the budget. That's a good thing, you can say. You can even talk about some of the Scandinavian countries who are considered to be the best examples when it comes to women empowerment. So this is how elaborately you can write this entire answer. I would suggest write some data also when you are mentioning that men and women are not equal in practical terms. For example, you're saying that the payment, that salary that they get is not same. You can mention some data. For example, this report, Global Gender Gap Report by World Economic Forum. They talk about this gender gap when it comes to payment. So mention that report specifically to substantiate your point. Okay. So this is how you can deal with this particular question. Now, question number 9. Next. This question is related to intercaste marriages and interreligious marriages. Question says, intercaste marriages between castes which have socio-economic parity have increased to some extent, but this is less true of interreligious marriages discussed. So this is a very good question, and they have taken it by observing what is happening in the society. So here we are saying that earlier in India, endogamy prevailed. Endogamy was very common. That means you could marry in your own group, and this group was supposed to be your caste. So marrying within your caste was a very normal phenomenon. But nowadays we are observing many caste groups are going ahead with intercaste marriages. But it is only for those who are having socio-economic parity. That means socially they belong to same or similar kind of level, or economically they belong to similar kind of level. For example, nowadays a Brahmin girl will get married to a Kshatriya boy, or a Kshatriya boy gets married to a Vaishya girl. But you will observe that all of them socially belong to upper varna or upper caste, and second, they are having similar kind of economic status. Now, here you have to show that why this is happening. This is a good thing that intercaste marriages are taking place. Good thing. But they are taking place, but inter-religious marriages are not taking place. So this you need to think about. First of all, you will mention about intercaste marriages. What are the factors behind this intercaste marriage which is taking place nowadays? Why they are taking place? First reason would be your urbanization. The phenomenon of urbanization, which is leading to new value system, especially among the younger generations. They are coming up with new value system which gives priority to individualism, personal choice, freedom, liberty. That is given more priority. So they don't want to restrict themselves to the decision taken by their caste group or their family members. So this new value system has a role to play. Then due to urbanization, most of the people are migrating to the urban region. They are getting education, especially which involves some liberal elements. They are relatively independent to some extent, especially we are talking about women. They're getting job, they're living in metro cities, they are earning on their own, they are not dependent on the family, so they can take their own decisions. And most importantly, because of migration, they are living in a way where traditional structure is not able to influence them the way they used to do earlier. For example, when you used to live in villages, there was Khap Panchayat, there was Caste Panchayat. They used to ensure that the law or rule made by them is implemented strictly. But nowadays, because people are migrating, they are educated also, they know about the law, they know about their rights, all of these phenomena is leading to a situation wherein these panchayats, caste panchayats, are not able to influence people to that extent. And so these traditional norms somehow are getting disturbed and people are going ahead with intercaste marriages. Now you will say that whatever arguments I have given, these should apply also for this inter-religious marriage. Because if people want their freedom, they should also go for inter-religious marriage. Correct. So why this is not happening? This is the second part of the question which you need to discuss. Now see, when it comes to caste, intercaste marriages, more or less people belong to the same religion. So the customs and traditions are relatively same. So in Hindu family, even if there is one person coming from one caste, one person coming from another caste, more or less traditions and customs are same. But when it comes to inter-religious marriage, the customs and traditions are very, very different. So it becomes very difficult for the society to accept that change. This is one of the resisting phenomena. Second, there is very high resistance from entire society, especially there are many vigilante groups, there are some political organizations or political parties, or there are some pressure groups who consistently oppose inter-religious marriages. They have concern related to the culture, but that resistance leads to this phenomena becoming a little bit political. And in the political discourse, we observe that people show resistance towards inter-religious marriages. We hear about this love jihad issue many a times. You can mention that term, no issues. So this is how we see resistance from the society. And then inter-religious marriages, especially the interaction of two different religions, is very much less in India. Or specifically to say any part of India, you'll see that different communities from different religions have interaction, but the interaction is very less. See, if you look at the Hindu community, there are different castes, but there will be interaction. If there is festival or there is any kind of ritual, there can be some interactions. But when it comes to inter-religious, the interactions are very less. So overall, these are the things which are leading to lesser inter-religious marriages. Now there is one more angle, that is legal angle. If you go for intercaste marriage, there's no much issue, but when you go for inter-religious marriage, you have to deal with this act called Special Marriage Act. Now, all those Special Marriage Act provides for the provision to allow you to marry a person of your choice from another religion. But there are some loopholes, there are some mechanisms which lead to some issues due to which the people cannot get married and they get into the trap of those pressure groups. So overall, we are saying these are the issues why we are not observing inter-religious marriages. Otherwise, we would have seen the same phenomena like intercaste marriages. Clear? Okay. Now, moving ahead with next question, question number 10. In dealing with socio-economic issues of development, what kind of collaboration between government, NGOs and private sector would be most productive? Now, a very simple question. There was a report by Niti Aayog, SDG India Index report. The report had said the same thing, that to deal with all these socio-economic issues, the development related issues, we need collaboration between these three things: government, NGOs and private sector. So the question has repeated the same thing said by Niti Aayog, nothing new. Now you have to discuss. To discuss, you need to show importance of all these three organs and how they can collaborate. They have asked about what kind of collaboration would be most productive. So they are not expecting you to write just one example of being most productive, but you can show different kinds of mechanisms which can be possible. Now, first of all, we will understand, or we will show our understanding related to the role of these three organs. First of all, if you go to the era before 1991, that is before the LPG reforms, at that time, there was only government who was taking care of all these issues related to development, all these socio-economic issues they used to deal with. That there was only government, no private sector, no NGO. But after 1991, we observe that private sector started playing a key role. Now, private sector, we saw investment, privatization, everything happening. But private sector focuses more on profit. They are not much interested in overall development. So they will more or less cater to the rich people or the urban middle class to some extent. But remaining people will be served by the government. So poor people, or you can see the poorest of the poor, the backward people, they will be served by government. But there is a problem with government. While serving, government is not able to do it completely, not able to do it more efficiently. So whenever government is not able to play its key role completely, in that case the role of NGOs comes into picture. So NGOs play the role of a bridge, wherein the people who are left over by the government could not serve them. They are the underserved people. NGOs gets into it and starts serving them. So we are saying this is how we are overall ensuring that every individual gets served, some welfareism or some development takes place. So here, please show through a diagram or something, you can show that the job of government, the job of government is to become an enabler, to provide, come up with some policies and come up with the design module which gives a kind of environment for the private sector and the NGOs and the individuals to go ahead with the development. And government will provide some design modules also. But when it comes to private sector, it's their job to come up with some investment in form of money, some innovation, and go for the economic growth of that country. And then comes the role of NGO to act as a bridge and lead the grassroots movements. So in case people are left, nobody is taking care of some people, then their grassroots movement should come forward. That is the job of NGOs. So this is the clear-cut separate definition or separate function of all these three organs. Now this is the first part of the question we dealt. Now we have to show how they all can collaborate, how we can make the work productive. So best answer is we can collaborate in such a way. Government and private sector can collaborate. We have heard about this PPP model, public private partnership. They can go ahead with that. There can be collaboration between private and NGOs also. So sometimes private sector will put some money, NGOs will put their volunteers, and they will go ahead with some activity. For example, we have this Swachh Bharat mission. So in this, not just private NGOs, even government was involved. All three were involved, wherein Swachh Bharat mission was being carried out. Even this National Skill Development Mission, all three are involved. So you can show these two can collaborate, these two can collaborate, even government and NGO can collaborate. You must have heard about this midday meal scheme. So there is an NGO called Akshay Patra Foundation. That NGO is helping government to some extent in implementing midday meal scheme in a better way. So they are collaborating, and there can be collaboration which includes all of these three. So show this with examples that this kind of collaboration is possible, and eventually it will be very, very productive. Clear? Okay. Now, question number 17, the 15 marker. What is a regional disparity? How does it differ from diversity? How serious is the issue of regional disparity in India? Three questions they have asked. First of all, what is regional disparity? Now, this question demands you to clearly differentiate between regional disparity and regional diversity. People get confused with it, and they are focusing on this issue because this is the major issue. Diversity is not a big issue for us. Rather, diversity has never been an issue for India. We are very diverse and we look at diversity in a positive way. So you're expected to clearly differentiate. So you can start with the disparity part, define it, or you can show the differentiation also. So regional disparity, this is one term, and another one is diversity. Now, first of all, this regional disparity in itself is a negative terminology. It is showing that in India, the regions are not at parity or not at equal level. So you can show that disparity in different terms. For example, I can talk about economy. You see, the northern part of India is still focusing on agrarian part. It is not that industrialized, whereas the southern or western part of India is very much industrialized. So you can see the difference. Even the migration which takes place is from north to the south. Even from the population angle, if you look at it, you'll see that population control measures have been taken in the southern part of India in a very good manner. But when it comes to northern part, it has not been taken into consideration to the extent it was required. So this is disparity. Even in terms of green revolution, you see green revolution took place, but in few states only. Other states, they are still backward. So you see, we have Punjab, we have Haryana, who is doing really good in agriculture, whereas we have states which are considered to be backward states or poor states because they are not doing good. So overall, you are trying to show this disparity. You can even add in the factor of this rural urban disparity also. That rural India is very much poor, whereas urban India is growing. You can show with examples also. So this is how we have tried to show all the disparities. Now this is just economic angle I have focused on. You can also focus on other angles. For example, you can show the level of education or literacy, give example of Kerala and then give example of Bihar to show the differences. You can talk about healthcare sector also. You'll see that in western and southern part of India, healthcare is relatively better. So all these angles you have to show and say that there is regional disparity in India, and it is a negative thing. Obviously, it's a very serious issue. Okay. Now the other thing was diversity. Now we are saying diversity is not a negative thing for us, it's a positive thing for us. So we have diversity in terms of language, in terms of race, in terms of ethnicity. So we are very diverse. We have different clothes, different food habits. The culture is very much diverse, and this is not a problem for India as such. So show this difference and then show how serious this regional disparity issue is. Because all the problems right now we are facing is because of this regional disparity. For example, people who are migrating from northern part of India to the southern part, they see that in the southern part, many people are talking nowadays about this son of soil doctrine. They say that we belong to this land and this leads to further regionalism, and we have right to exploit our resources, and the people from northern part of India should not come here. Why this is happening? Why this hatred is coming up? Because of this disparity. If you develop the northern part, specifically the UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, these areas, they will not need to come to other states or go to other states. So industrialization has to take place. There is need of a policy which ensures that the development takes place in an equitable manner. Okay, so this is how you have to deal with this entire issue. I would say that you can come up with some solutions which are creative. For example, you can say in the backward regions, we can go ahead with some SEZ programs wherein we built up some special economic zones. You can go ahead with this program of aspirational districts, which is a very good one. You can even give more funds. You can build more infrastructure in these backward regions so that we can bring it to some parity level or some equitable level. Clear? Okay. Question number 18. Despite comprehensive policies for equity and social justice, underprivileged sections are not yet getting the full benefits of affirmative action envisaged by the Constitution comment. Now, anyone who is reading newspaper will understand why this question has been asked. So recently we saw that subcategorization was being discussed, that we should go ahead with subcategorization of castes. Specifically, they were talking about OBC, and this Rohini commission was also established. They were giving their report and all. So this is the reason this question has been asked. What the question is trying to say is that we have tried to implement many policies for social justice. We have come up with this affirmative action. That is, for example, reservation is one of the affirmative action. But even if we have tried to do this, the people who should get benefit out of it, they are not getting it. They're saying underprivileged sections are not yet getting the full benefit. This was the same argument for subcategorization. That, for example, we have SC community. So in SC, there are some people who can be considered haves and some have not. Or we can say there are some who are very affluent now. They are doing really good. They are taking maximum benefit of the reservation. And there are many other castes within SCs who have not taken any benefit out of it. So these are the people who are underprivileged, who are the Antyodaya, and they should be served, but they are not getting the benefit because the reservation is benefited by only the affluent section from this community. So there is an argument for subcategorization, that we should have some creamy layer, some phenomena wherein we should review our reservation system altogether. So what we'll do, the question, if you want to deal it rightly, first of all, show these comprehensive policies that we have come up with. So for example, we will first of all talk about Article 15, Article 15, Article 16, even Article 46. All these articles provide for some kind of policy level action which government can take for the benefit of underprivileged sections. So show this entirely and then say that even if we have these policies and laws, we are not able to do this because of some issues. For example, this subgrouping, the affluent sections taking benefit out of it. So even some data could be quoted. For example, if you talk about Maharashtra, in Maharashtra there are many SC caste groups, but out of them we will see the Mahar group being relatively more affluent as compared to other SC groups. So this is how you can show the data, or some example can be quoted. Then you can say that even if government is coming up with many schemes to implement, they are not implementing it rightly because there is corruption, because there is bureaucratic hurdle. The bureaucracy works in a very slow manner. Because of that also, sometimes people are not aware of these schemes or subsidies, because of which these underprivileged sections are not taking benefit, because they do not have much education, they do not have basic infrastructure, they don't have even housing. How do you expect them to know all the schemes and everything? So that is a problem. And then if you show the private sector also, in private sector there is no reservation or something like that. So there is no such thing which leads to social justice in this arena. So show this entire issue this way and then give some solution also. The solution could be go for subcategorization, go for this creamy layer concept. Even in SC ST also, already we have creamy layer in the OBCs, so you can include that here. And you can ask that whatever schemes we are coming up with, try to focus more on implementing it at 100% level, and we can give more funding for such schemes in future. This is also you can see. Okay, now question number 90. Globalization has increased urban migration by skilled young unmarried women from various classes. How has this trend impacted upon their personal freedom and relationship with family? Now, the question is about globalization, and this is not something new. Every time UPSC asks one of the question related to globalization and how it impacts a particular section of the society. Sometimes they will ask about women, sometimes they will ask about youth, sometimes they may ask about tribals also. So any section of our society can be considered and how globalization is impacting them. This is the basic trend we can understand. Now here they have focused on these women, skilled, young and unmarried women. Now especially you will observe that now because of globalization, the urbanization which is taking place, new value system is coming up, MNCs are coming up. There is key role of MNCs when it comes to globalization. So these MNCs are providing you the jobs. So the women who are working in these MNCs or big companies, they are living in metro cities, they are having relatively different lifestyle as compared to women living in village areas or tier 2 tier 3 cities. So you will show that particular difference specifically. So they have asked about impact on personal freedom and relationship with family. So we'll deal with it one by one. First of all, give the introduction of globalization, the phenomenon of globalization, how it is impacting, and then specifically talk about the changes or impact on personal freedom. So on individual level, think about a woman. You'll get to know that her autonomy has been increased to some extent. She's taking her own decisions to a good extent. Even her marriage is now getting delayed. She is focusing more on education or career. Overall, we are saying she is becoming relatively independent and empowered. Okay, so this personal freedom aspect is there. And then if you're talking about the relationship with family, how her relationship with family is changing. So you'll see we are looking at relatively more democratic families. If you go to village areas, there is intense level of patriarchy and patriarchal structure existing in the families. But when you look at these urban areas, you will see relatively more democratic families where women have some say in the decision making. So this is a good aspect. Their relationship with family is changing. Some new forms of marriages or some new forms of relationships are coming up. For example, there is single parent household you can observe, or you can go for live-in relationships also. These are new kinds of family systems which we observe. Then we can take example of some generational gap that we are observing nowadays. That the earlier generation which went to these urban areas, they still have some values which were traditional. But the young generation, the women from young generation, they are having relatively different value sets, and this is due to the urbanization, and this is due to the globalization. So this is how you can show the impact clearly. And eventually you can come to the conclusion that this globalization is a very interesting phenomenon. It can be considered a double-edged sword. There are some good aspects of globalization, there are some negative aspects of globalization, and you can conclude it in a balanced way. Okay? Now, the last question from the society. Critically analyze the proposition that there is a high correlation between India's cultural diversities and socio-economic marginalities. Now, this question is very interesting. It is saying that there is a relation between India's diversity, cultural diversity specifically, and economic marginality. So, overall, it is trying to say that the people who are coming from diverse cultures, so specifically, they are talking about cultural minorities. They are saying they are socio-economically marginalized, or they are relatively backward. So this is the structure they are trying to establish, that in India, cultural diversity and this economic marginalization has some relation. Now, even if this statement is given, that doesn't mean you will have to agree with this statement. You have to critically analyze it. So you can show one side of the coin wherein this is happening, another side of the coin wherein this is not happening. So first we'll try to show that yes, this is happening to some extent. So you can first discuss about what is this cultural diversity, what is socio-economic marginalization, a brief about it, and then you can talk about this particular differences. For example, the first part, you can talk about Sachar committee. The committee specifically mentioned that Muslims in India are very much backward. They are mostly working in informal sector. Their living standard is very low. Their educational level is very low. So this is showing that cultural diversity and the socio-economic marginalization has some relation. You can also show the issue of language. For example, English language. One who knows English language will get better job opportunities, more job opportunities, whereas person knowing only regional languages will not be getting those opportunities. So there is difference. Then people from northeastern part of India, they consistently face racial discrimination, and this racial discrimination further leads to their socio-economic status getting degraded. To some extent, they are not becoming part of the mainstream. So this is how you can show that to some extent, yes, we see that correlation. But we are discussing the other side of the coin. That shows that it is not necessary that this will happen. Why? Because first of all, we have a government which is called as welfare state, which comes up with some schemes, subsidies, or actions and policies which try to reduce these socio-economic marginalities. So they ensure that some schemes for these people is there, so that we can make them part of mainstream. So that is there. Second, we are observing urbanization. We are giving people education. We are providing health to all of the people. So it's like, to improve their socio-economic condition, government is going for policies which is uniform, right? Even we have private sector which is having uniform kind of policies to some extent. Then we have some regional differences also. In some regions, even the minority groups will be seen as relatively more powerful, or they are not in a socio-economic marginal conditions. For example, if you go to Lakshadweep, if you go to Jammu and Kashmir, Muslims are relatively dominant. If you go to Punjab, you will observe Sikh people are dominant to some extent. So regionally there is some diversity, there is some variation we can observe. And eventually, because of the phenomena of globalization and the economic growth that we are observing, all this is leading to the formation of a new middle class in India. Now, when we say middle class, it has nothing to do with this cultural diversity as such. It's a caste, it's a class in itself. So we can say that the correlation is not uniformly applicable, always applicable as such. So you are going against the statement, and it is okay. You can go against it because it is a critical analysis. Clear? So this is all about the society and social issues part of GS paper 1. Thank you. नेक्स्ट पीपीटी लगा रहे हैं हम, दूसरा लाइव स्टार्ट करना है.